Hello and welcome to the Trumped Up Podcast. I am your host, Keith Rao. This is Season 1, Episode 8, Policy Prescriptions. We'll get into that in a moment, but first, I just released a book called The Democratic Asylum, a political manifesto. It's a political outsider's guide to the 2016 election and the crazy tactics used by the left. You can pick it up on Amazon or go over to the Trumped Up Podcast Facebook page and click the link that will take you there. It's also available in Kindle form, ebook version, and in about 2 weeks or so we'll have an audio book coming out as well, in case you really are not a big reader. So let's get right into it. You know, the left has gone really extremely far out there, and some of their policies are just to the extreme, and then the right stays to the other extreme. But if the left actually came up with some common sense policies, the Democrats came up with these common sense policies, the Republicans would likely be more than welcome to support them and work with them and get some things done. But right now it's all about obstruction and stopping Donald Trump. So often they talk about, well, we can't touch entitlements, but that's not true. We need some entitlement reforms and to strengthen programs. We'll start with Social Security reform. They need to remove the income limit caps where presently it's like $134,000 of your income is taxed for Social Security. This doesn't apply to Medicare, I believe, but then any money you earn over this $134,000 no longer gets taxed for Social Security purposes. We just need to remove that cap because there's no reason rich people that are making millions and billions of dollars shouldn't be paying more into the system in that aspect. I don't think they should be paying higher income taxes, but they should be contributing to the greater good of our country and poor, disabled Americans, as well as retirees. I mean, we got to contribute for younger workers. And then there's a lot of things involved in that where, like, the whole application process for disability applicants, or let's continue with that. So after we remove these caps, they then need to come up with a plan where, say you retire with more than $10 million, you really shouldn't be drawing off the system for Social Security retirement benefits. It should go back into the system and be broken down in some kind of way where, say, a part of this tax, the extra money that came in, and the money that's not being given back to rich people that really don't need it if you have $10 million or more, or especially if you're a billionaire. Even one of the founders of Home Depot agreed to this. He's like, why do I get this money? I don't need it, and they shouldn't be giving it to me, but they do. So we could fix that right there, and then the money that is left into the system, one can go to younger retirees when they get younger workers when they get to retirement age, and then you can divvy up the rest of it to go towards Medicare for poor people or disability benefits, and put some into the SSDI fund and some into the SSI fund, and leave portion, say a third stays into the retirement fund to keep it fiscally around for a long time, because they're saying this whole program is going to end in 20 years or so anyway, and then split up the other into the general fund to fund disability programs, which would be a great benefit to people who can no longer work anymore. Next policy where I think we could find some compromise would be to reallocate a lot of foreign payments are going overseas right now, and they're not taxed at all, number one. Number two, refugees are taking money out of government programs and it's being transferred to other countries. To prevent this abuse of the system, we simply should just tax these foreign payments, like through Western Union or PayPal or whatever, at a rate of like 50%, maybe 40%, I don't know. And then we could use that money to either pay down the national debt, we could put it into food stamp program, something useful that benefits Americans, so it's not just being drawn off the system. Not to mention there's a lot of people here working illegally, and then they send the money back to foreign countries, yet again tax-free, plus they probably earned it tax-free, so total loss there, and we need to stop that totally. Now you got the Democrats, and they have, every time it comes to minimum wage, it's some extreme thing, straight to $15 an hour, and then Rashida Tlaib there, she's like, no, let's make it 20, although she doesn't pay her own employees that. They actually make 15, her staffers, but she's not putting her money where her mouth is. But drastic things like this will cost jobs, have people's hours cut, and like legally, the illegals being hired instead. We've gotten into that before, but I think we could come up with a more common sense minimum wage annual increase based on the GDP. So to break that down, if we take it in the way like where Social Security increases are, the GDP is 3%, so Social Security gets a 3% increase every year. If there's a 2% increase, they get a 2% increase. In some years, they don't even get any. But if the annual GDP is at 3%, which is roughly pretty close to that, and every year the minimum wage should go up by 3% based on the cost of living increasing. This is a much more gradual thing. It won't affect jobs in the least. It's only going to be between like 3 and 75 cents, depending on how much money you make. And it's not some drastic extremist view. And then the states like Massachusetts and California and places that have already increased their minimum wage well over the federal minimum wage, it won't affect them because their wages are already higher. Their minimum wage is already higher. I think this is just way more common sense. And if somebody actually came out with that plan, it would probably pass flying colors and overwhelmingly on both sides of the aisle because, hey, we increased minimum wage and, hey, we didn't kill jobs. So it's a win-win for both sides. That's where we always need it to be. A win for the people of the country, especially working people, and a win for Democrats and Republicans. And then everybody's happy and nobody can complain. Next, we need to legalize and tax marijuana. 11 states already have done this for recreational use. The tax is pretty high in most of those states, like Massachusetts. It's a 20% tax, plus each town on top of that can add an additional 3% tax. So, and then we have 29 states where it's tax-free because they legalize for medical reasons, which is more than a majority. But the majority of states now supports this, and here's what I found online. Sorry about that, some crazy thing happening in the background. I don't know. My phone over there, voice-activated control or something. But, so yeah, if we federally legalize recreational use of marijuana and tax it at 10%, we can use this tax specifically dedicated for mental health care. I mean, we can make community mental health clinics because there's a lot of people out there with mental health problems and they're not being addressed, or they don't have insurance that pays for it, or they just... Plus, we can make awareness that it's okay to go out and get mental health treatment, because if you have an anxiety disorder or you're depressed or something, it's probably good to see somebody. At the least, it's good to talk to somebody and get out what you're going through. So, this is the one where they're always talking about comprehensive immigration reform on the Democrat side. That's just a talking point mostly, and means they don't really want to do anything, but this would be a harder one to compromise on, but definitely need some immigration reform. The first thing we need to do is get rid of this 90-day fiancé visa. Anyone who's watched 90 Day Fiancé reality show on TV is highly aware that this whole system is just being abused. It's ridiculous. It needs to stop. People should come here on their own merit, and then you can get married later on. You shouldn't be able to get this visa to come here, get married real quick, and then do certain things and become a citizen. It's just a dumb plan, and it's just opening it up for abuse. Next, we need to do a few more raids and go out and round up the people that have overstayed their visas. That doesn't mean we're just going to go out and deport them. We'll give them 90 days to get their visa up to date and in order, especially like a student visa or a work visa or a work permit, because maybe they just overlooked it, maybe they missed the notice, maybe they didn't do something they were supposed to, but at least give them 90 days to get the chance. And then if they still don't get their visa in order, then they should be deported because they didn't do what they were supposed to again, and that's just not acceptable. We definitely need some tougher asylum laws. I mean, we can't accept every person from all over the world that's claiming to be a refugee. It's just ridiculous. It draws on the system. And the people that use these refugee programs actually get grants from the government. A lot of them have to get food stamps and housing assistance because they can't speak English, or they don't have the ability to work or whatever. But it's just a draw on the system, and it needs to be fixed. Now here's the common sense one. We need to deport all the people that came here illegally. We need to start by ending the DACA and similar programs. Sure, the people that are already here, maybe we can give them a pass. But if you just keep leaving this DACA, it's just encouraging more people to come here. And then it's just another draw on the system. It's like a vicious cycle. It just needs to stop. Next common sense one. We need more money, and we need to secure the border. We need to make sure Border Patrol, ICE, and etc. all have the money they need to operate properly and to take care of the people that do come here illegally. And we also need money to continue securing the border and building the barrier and getting that done as much as possible, as much as they want to build or need to build, because there's really no point in having a fence if right 5 feet later it ends and you can just walk around it. Then I seen, on a side note to that, some bright-ass professor decided to have seesaws installed in the newer border wall. Sure, it sounds good on the front end, but what happens when some kid launches the other kid from the other side and they go flying and get hurt? And then somebody's going to get sued, and it really wasn't a great idea. I mean, sure, having ways for them to talk to each other or interact with other children is great, but it's really not the greatest idea. Then we need to go to a merit-based immigration system, where if you're highly educated, such a doctor, a lawyer, a researcher, somebody who invents something, somebody who's trying to create a cure for something, somebody who's highly technological, these people, or somebody who wants to come here for an American education at a highly prestigious school, they should also get top priority, which leads us to the point of that the chain-based family migration also needs to stop, because, I mean, I'm all for it. Okay, your spouse can come with you and your 2 children. And in some incidents, the parent of the immigrant, because they have health problems and the immigrant was the sole caretaker of the person. Other than that, everybody should have to come here on their own merits, not on the merits of somebody else. It's just not acceptable, and it should stop. And then we should put in a requirement that requires all immigrants to either speak or be willing and actively trying to learn English so they can have a better experience in America and be better able to communicate with everyone around them. It just makes sense, and it is what it is. So we'll be right back after a quick commercial break from our sponsor. Hey, you too can join the podcasting world and be one of the greatest podcasters out there. Build an audience, get sponsorships, earn money, and do many, many interesting things. You can also get listener support to help sponsor your show. All by using Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to become a podcaster. Anyone can do it. If you got something to say, or someone thinks you got something to say, or you just want to say something, come and join Anchor and join the podcasting revolution. Okay, we're back. Thank you for staying tuned. There's some more policies we can get into. This is a little boring to you, a little drawn out. I'm sorry, but policy is policy. Not everybody's excited about it. Most people aren't. I get it, but having common sense ideas gets us to where we need to be. It helps us improve. So next we need to work on reducing homelessness and poverty. I mean, if you look at cities like that were recently pointed out by the president, such as Baltimore, Chicago, Detroit, San Francisco, these places are becoming defunct. They do have infestations of rats, not whatever the left-wing media was trying to make this out to be. But it's not an attack on the people that actually live there. It's an attack on the people that run their cities and allow this to happen. I mean, we have tons of abandoned buildings, but people are struggling, and these districts have all been given billions and billions of dollars, and nobody really knows where it goes except for, like in Baltimore, they probably used it to ramp up the tourist areas like the Harbor District, probably the stadiums for the Baltimore Ravens and baseball teams and whatever. But we really need to start using that money more wisely, like the economic opportunity zones is a start, but there's so many things we could be doing. The sad fact is, the billions and billions of dollars that have been wasted already could have housed every homeless person in America, as well as every person that lived in an apartment, into their own home. Not mortgage free, not free. They build it up front, then you pay a mortgage later on at a more affordable rate than what banks are charging for mortgages. I mean, if we looked at things like that, things would get done and we wouldn't have a homeless problem in America, especially for veterans. The Veterans Administration or the Department of Defense should start dedicating some of their funds to make sure this doesn't happen, because none of our great veterans who served our country nobly should ever have to live on a street. But granted, sometimes the people living on the streets are there by choice because either they need more money for their drug addiction, or they have mental health problems, or whatever other underlying conditions that may be going on. Now, you got the Democrats and they talk about healthcare reform. Now, I got some pretty bright ideas or bold ideas on healthcare reform too, but it's not Medicare for all. It's not a totally socialist program. It's not an expansion of Obamacare. But if healthcare is a human right, like people like Bernie Sanders tries to say, then why the hell are these companies allowed to make billions and billions of dollars in profit, unfeathered, and spend it on whatever they want to spend it on, jack up CEO prices, jack up the prices of treatments? Really, there should be a government-mandated limit to the profit they can earn of like 10%. Then anything they make over this 10%, not just healthcare facilities, but pharmaceutical companies as well, then anything they make in profit over the 10% profit margin, which they can keep and use for whatever they want. But then we've got to take 33% of the 90% additional profits after that and spend that on research to develop new treatments, new cures, do research into conditions of how they affect people and what's causing them. Then we can take another 33% of this additional profit that they've been wasting on whatever the hell they wanted to provide poor people with health insurance, which is kind of like Medicare, but it would be paid for out of the generosity of the profit of these hospitals that have been making outrageous amounts of money for way too long, and the drug companies who create customers and no cures and lead you to having to take 6 more drugs because of the side effects from the first drug. And then the last 33% of any profit over the 10% can be specifically devoted to mental health treatment in public schools. Because if you see, there's a lot of chaos in the streets with people freaking out in grocery lines and just insanity of people yelling at it. I don't know if it's because they want a viral video, but oftentimes the pressure of school or what people are personally dealing with is an issue. So we can use this 33% to put mental health treatment in public schools to help people better deal, our children better deal with being there. We also need to continue to improve the VA and the Veterans' Choice. We need to modernize our military to reduce the human impact. This is key, because if we can reduce the human impact of war, we're going to have a lot less people coming home with PTSD and missing limbs. I mean, we need to bring technological advances to war. Like, the Space Force is a good start because we can explore space just like Reagan did with Star Wars. But we need to explore space so we can understand how not to kill our planet, number one, but also how we can protect ourselves in new and creative ways. Or if the planet does get destroyed, we have an alternative to go to. And then we need to bring in other technological advances like cyber attacking, but we also need to bring in robotics. There's no reason in this day and age why humans should be fighting wars anymore. We have drones that are unmanned, and we can bring in robots to do the job. Therefore, our casualty numbers will drop to zero, and all the underlying problems that come after people have been in a war zone will simply just get reduced or wiped away altogether. If you can't agree with that, then I don't know, because we shouldn't just keep sending people into war zones to die. There's better ways to do it, and there's plenty of robotics companies out there that are working on this technology and weapons that we can use against our enemies. And then that'll also help in these conflicts with North Korea, Iran, China, because there's not going to be a human impact, and we're going to be way ahead of them, and nuclear war probably won't be the option, because they'll be like, what the hell did America create? I don't know. What are we going to do? And they're going to have to because a lot of the warfare tactics that are used now are age-old and ancient, and it just needs to be modernized. Now, I think we should also start reallocating foreign aid, money that we give to other countries, to domestic programs. We give tons and tons of money to these foreign countries, and we really get nothing in return. It doesn't help our poverty. It doesn't really help their poverty. It doesn't stop them from sending their immigrants here illegally, or refugees, or people running away from their country, which makes no sense to me anyway, to claim you run away from violence. And Baltimore actually has a higher murder rate than Guatemala, where a lot of these people are coming from. So you're kind of defeating the purpose. But yeah, we need to reallocate this foreign aid to domestic programs. We can use some to spend on infrastructure. We can use it for the food stamp program. We can spend some on healthcare, but we can donate a lot to education. I have a wonderful tax reform plan. Granted, Donald Trump's tax reform plan is working great, but I don't think it goes far enough. I think a great addition to this would be to allow all new startup small businesses to operate their first year tax-free. If they did that, they'd be able to make money, and then the second year they could expand and improve their companies and buy more equipment and hire more people, and it would just help stimulate the economy and bring up the GDP. It's all a circular, wonderful thing that all works great like that. And then we need to reduce the self-employment tax. There's no reason that a small business owner who's considered self-employed should be paying 33% of their income to the federal government. Really, we could reduce this down to something more similar to the income tax rate, or a flat 10-12% tax, and it would just help these businesses out way more, and it would make their operating overhead way less, which leads to more growth, more business, and just expanding this. Well, I'm about out of stuff to say this week. Policy is a little long-winded, and I'm sure there's a lot more things we could be doing. There's a lot more ideas, and I could get way more in-depth and detailed into these plans. Remember, check out the Trumped Up Podcast on Facebook. You can listen to the podcast on anchor.fm/Trumped#up. You can follow us on Instagram. You can listen to the podcast rebroadcast video on YouTube. You can also follow us on Instagram if I didn't say that already. There's also several other platforms where you can catch our podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Stitcher, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, and more. Remember, you can go out and purchase The Democratic Asylum, a political manifesto, The Outsider's Look into the 2016 election, and the crazy tactics used by the left. Go over to Amazon and pick that up. You'd be doing me a favor. It would be awesome. And it would be great to see you guys buying one. And you'd probably learn a lot. And it would be a little more exciting than the way this podcast is going this week. But it is what it is. Tune in next week to the Trumped Up Podcast. I'm Keith Rao, and I am out.